Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Cloud Chat with Stephan and Matt. I'm one of your hosts, Stephan Stelter. Excited to be here and excited to have Matt with us again, as usual. We are looking extremely formal because we're going to talk about formal things. And we're excited to welcome back Stan Cox from our team at NetApp. Tell everyone a little bit about what you do again, Stan.
Yeah, my name's Stan Cox. I manage our global data centers and IT infrastructure.
Outstanding. And we've got some questions for you about data centers. Are they the dinosaurs of the year?
Yeah, one of those things that, we've talked about a lot is the cloud, right? In fact, it's called Cloud Chat with Stephan and Matt. So do the data centers have a place? Everybody talks about this cloud thing. So we have a couple of questions for you, Stan.
I've been doing data centers.
Are you going to work yourself out of a job here, my friend?
Well, I've been doing it for a very long time. And I would say for the past 16 years, data centers have been going away. And what I mean by that is there's always a new trend. There's always a new gimmick, if you will. And, when I first started out, the thing was you build your own data center, and back then we had 50 watts a square foot. It was like, whoa, 50 watts per square feet, man, that thing must just be humming along. And that was around like a 1998, 1999, and then right around 2000, 2001, it was like, oh, you got to be in a colo. Why would you have your own data center when you could go rent space in a co-location? Right. So then the trend was, hey, move everything to the colo. Then it was, the colo's pretty darn expensive and it's hard to manage. And if you don't have good structure around it, you're going to grow uncontrollably and it's going to be extremely expensive. Let's bring it back to the data center. Right. And then this thing called cloud came into play. And it's like, hey, let's push everything to the cloud. Again, not much structure in the beginning. Wasn't quite sure, what security meant with that. And it was hard to, herd the cats, bring that stuff back from the cloud, back into your own data center, right? So there's always been this sort of evolving
it's like the world of centralization, decentralization, centralization.
Yes. Client server. Yes.
But you picked on an interesting, there's a theme here. A lot of it's driven by cost, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. So, whether you're leasing a data center, you own a data center and you're depreciating it as an asset, or you're renting space at a data center, or you're going to the cloud, it's going to a data center that's being hosted by somebody else.
So you're talking about, you're talking about cost efficiency, not just cost, but the efficiencies.
Yeah, absolutely. As an example, once your data leaves your hands, how do you manage the data? How do you put structure around it? How do you, slice it up and, do analytics or, metrics? So trying to figure out how to put controls and mechanisms around that, along with cost efficiencies and support models, really sort of determines in my opinion, the factor of whether the data center is going to die or not. So, in our world where we stand today, we understand the value of cloud. It is important. It offers elasticity, the ability to be agile. And then there are some things that maybe necessarily don't belong in the cloud. And so for us, it truly is a hybrid approach. And so while we continue to consolidate our quote unquote data center footprint around the globe and we expand into the cloud, we definitely know that there's an importance to having the data center because we run some great sites, and from a cost efficiency standpoint, it's very hard to beat.
Yeah, when you mentioned this movement from fully on-premises company-owned data centers into a co-location, was it an all or nothing move? Was it we're going to colo, we're decommissioning data center, or was it
yeah? So I've been on both sides of the fence. While we're here at NetApp, we had a combination of within our production environments that were in data centers that we owned, and we're in data centers that we leased through a colo model. So in the US, that was our model. And then we consolidated, built our own data center in Raleigh, North Carolina, and then worked with a vendor to build a data center in Hillsboro, Oregon, and moved everything out of the colo and consolidated into our Hillsboro, Oregon data center. And why did we land there? Again, it goes around cost and the ability to manage the workloads. It was an area where electricity is extremely cheap. There's 3 or 4 different methods of distributing electricity to the data center. It's a cool climate. 80% of the year we could use fresh air to cool our environment. So that cut down on the cost. And it just worked out really well for us. But now the cloud is coming into play. We're looking at it a little bit differently. We're starting to offload and distribute some loads, which makes sense to go into the cloud, whether that be cloud native, or if that needs to go to maybe a SaaS provider who's an expert at running their own environments that they can manage from top to bottom. We don't have to worry about as many resources to support that. And really at the end of the year, we can pay our own, annual utility bill, if you will, from the SaaS provider.
So that's an interesting point, because Stephan and I have talked about this. Talking about some things for SaaS, some things for cloud, maybe some things for hybrid cloud. Love to get your view on that delineation. You just Sure. mentioned a little bit there. Can you delineate, maybe to validate some of the stuff that Stephan and I have talked about in the past?
Sure. So, like stuff that we keep on premise could be highly critical, needs to be available 24/7, 365, and perhaps needs a white glove service. If something was to break, how long would it take to support that? So we have folks at our data centers, and we also have an operational team. So, we've got an SLA if something breaks and it's deemed critical, within that hour, we've got all the right people on it. We're troubleshooting and we're attempting to restore service. So that makes sense for sort of those applications that need that sort of attention. We have applications where we've got developers who do not need or do not want to go through any sort of red tape, bureaucracy, need stuff extremely fast. They need to be agile, just leave them alone and let them bang away on a keyboard and let them do their things to deliver the next and greatest thing. And that works extremely well in the public cloud, right?
Interesting.
There's lots of services and features that somebody like an Amazon, a Google, an Oracle Cloud, you name it, can offer to the developer or to the application owner that you don't necessarily get by being on-prem in a traditional space. So there are those application workloads where we say, hey, you know what? Go to the cloud. That's a great sandbox to go play in. And you're going to get all these, cool and neat and rich features and, go have at it, right? And then we've got some applications that want a little bit of that stuff that you can get from a hyperscaler or that cloud native environment. They still want a little bit of maybe white glove service and that 1 hour SLA. So we developed our own private cloud called Cloud One, and that sits on premise in our data center. It's sort of segregated into a different part of the data center, if you will. But now, if you want to take advantage of a CI/CD pipeline and containerization, and still have a white glove service and people to perform triage for you, you can do that. So that's sort of like the 3 different areas or the 3 different flavors that I think we sort of break down from an application portfolio perspective. Hopefully that makes sense.
It sure does. It sounds like in the tombstone of the data center doesn't have a date yet after the dash. It sounds like this is something that's going to continue to exist. We're going to continue to leverage them for the right workloads at the right time.
Yeah. What I see is, go ahead, Matt.
I was going to say, I have a question for you, because you made an interesting delineation here, and I'm just curious because I love the data center perspective. So what you're telling me is that for really critical workloads, maybe I can't get that as a service through a public cloud provider. So say if I wanted a really specialized SLA, is it the SLAs? Is it the service that's driving the on-prem, or is it the customization?
Or is it the cost of the service?
Or is it the cost?
Kind of
yeah,
glove,
can you?
I wonder if there's.
I'd love your perspective, Stan, on
Sure.
What's
So
driving that from
if you went to, let's say, maybe like a full-blown SaaS model, right? They can provide you pretty much the support needs that you want or that you need, right? Because they're only managing their service, their application, right? Whether that's an SAP or a Salesforce, or they're the experts in that field. And so if you push your workload to them and allow them to manage that, they're the experts at it. There's probably nobody better in the world that could support it. But what type of support model do you want? Do you want the platinum service? Do you want the gold service? Do you want the silver, the bronze, etc.? Right? We don't differentiate that in our data centers. So whether you're in our traditional space or within our private cloud, you're always going to get platinum service, if that makes sense.
So it does, but you're not making an argument that I shouldn't move to SaaS. What you're saying, though, is there's certain applications that probably can't take advantage of SaaS, though, right?
True, 100%. There are applications that we purchase out of the box, right? And you configure your application, you create your development team, your support team, etc. That application may not offer a SaaS service.
Okay, but that's also the case. Like, I'll pick on our Active IQ. We couldn't buy Active IQ; we had to create it, right? So that's a great example of something that we can't SaaS.
Exactly.
Maybe a hybrid model might work, but we're very interested in keeping the availability, the performance, and because again, costs and efficiencies matter. That seems like the sweet spot for why it maybe remain mostly on-prem.
Agreed. Right, and timing is a big play. Resources and how much attention you want to put in to an environment or an application, right? There are some applications that are so customized. And through that process, resources come and resources go. Maybe you don't have all the correct documentation. Maybe a lot of that stuff is in somebody's head who now works for another company. And then you have to make basically an executive decision on, do I want to deconstruct this environment and deconfig this environment and perhaps go in a different direction, whether that's rebuilding it or whether it's going to a completely different application or SaaS model, etc. So, those are some of the tough decisions that executives, have to make, right? Because all that stuff costs money. Or do you limp along within the current environment and pick up the phone or answer phone calls and say, I'm sorry a lot. Right?
So let's shift gears too, because I'm very aware of the work you do. I'm very impressed by your team. Your team has a lot of best practices in the data center realm. So I want to kind of go here so you live in a world where we're now on our fifth or sixth big boss who always wants to get out of the data center business.
Yeah.
I've seen some of your graphs and some of your work you have done. What are you doing to shrink this data center while you're growing our business?
Well, I mean, it's going to sound like a shameless plug, but I mean, NetApp products are really helping my team, achieve this. As we go to all flash FAS, as the latest, FlexPod, comes into play, and some of the automation tools that we can do and take advantage of through ONTAP. Makes it extremely easy for us to do, right? Everything is becoming a smaller form factor. Everything is processing twice and 3 times the amount of information, and they're taking less power, right? So now, I would have an environment, let's say, that would take 10 racks of storage, compute, and network. And, you've seen the graphs where we've switched over to like an all flash FAS base, and that has shrunk down to 3 racks, right? So that's, each rack gets two power circuits. Each rack has to have cooling or air conditioning provided to it. Each rack gets 2, power supplies per unit. All that stuff adds up. So if I can still process the same amount of information, or maybe even 2 times or 3 times the amount of information in a smaller space, that becomes extremely valuable. And then you just have to weigh your options. If I'm running these applications and I'm processing this amount of information in my private cloud or in my traditional space, if I was to shift that workload over to the cloud, what would it cost? And maybe cloud's a little bit more expensive, but maybe then cloud offers some features that we can't do traditionally in the data center. So if that makes sense, let's shift that workload over. I use the adage of, I can change the oil on my car. It's probably going to take me a half a day. I'm going to forget to get stuff from the parts store. I'm going to bang my knuckles to death. But at the end of the day, I would have changed my oil. Or does it make sense for me to go pay $60 and have somebody else change my oil for me, which is only going to take maybe an hour, and I get to sip on a Starbucks?
Right, there you go.
I think I'm going to go pay the $60. So I think the same thing when it comes to data centers, cloud native, SaaS, et cetera. You sort of take those things into consideration when you're making a decision. It's like, okay, maybe cloud's going to cost a little bit more, but man, it's going to make my life a heck of a lot easier for this particular workload. So let's go shift that to the cloud. Then there may be that other stuff that says, it's a little bit more expensive. We've got the expertise, the wherewithal, the people to support it. Let's put it in the private cloud, or let's keep it on-prem in our traditional space.
One of the things Matt and I talk about a lot, Stan, is the idea that there's a growth element to a workload. If it's a hyper growth, or let's say an unpredictably growing application or capability, we'd like to put it in the public cloud. Whereas if the growth is pretty steady and we know how it behaves, and we can plan on a 12-month cycle for how it's going to run, without making massive investments, it makes a whole lot of sense to put on premises. And this is something that in Andreessen Horowitz, it's an article called The $1 Trillion Paradox. They highlight some of this. I was curious if that jives with your view of the world and the way that you think about applications, if it happens to align. Curious your thoughts there.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It makes sense. There's nothing worse than, planning for X and ending up with Y. So from a cloud perspective, especially if we continue to educate our folks at NetApp on what cloud really is, what it means, and how to properly manage it, you can save some money on certain instances. The cloud should be treated like a utility model. So if your lights are on, you're going to pay for your lights. When your lights go off, you don't pay for your lights. I don't really have that luxury in my data center to sort of turn stuff on and to turn stuff off. So, the example that you brought up, that's where I think it sort of differentiates itself, and it makes real good sense.
Awesome. I have one other question for you, and this is kind of rolling back a little to the beginning of our conversation. You were talking about 50 watts per square foot. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that means? Is that big or small? What does it look like now after you all flash FAS things? Does that increase the density but reduce the? I just, the math part in my brain is interested by the number, and if you can eliminate it a little bit.
Relationship things. Yeah.
Yes.
Sure. I mean, so back then when you're 50 watts a square foot, you may have a rack that's consuming a kilowatt worth of power, right? And that thing was humming along, and you could hear the fans turning on, and you were stacked to the gills while it was absorbing all that power to run the environment. When you run to where we are today in NetApp, we average about 8 kilowatts.
Wow.
In some instances, 10 kilowatts per rack. So to give you an example of our data center, which is in Raleigh, which we share with our product development group, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's about 45 megawatts. And to put that in perspective, essentially you could light up like a small city or a small town. Take blocks and blocks of homes, and we could light up, those homes, and that's the amount.
We could mine a lot of Bitcoin, is what you're saying.
Yeah, that we're drawing into that data center. Now, that's what's being supplied to the data center. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're consuming all that power, but if we needed that power, we've got like 45 megawatts worth of power.
But today, I mean, I saw your graphs, if I'm not mistaken, since 2014, you've grown our data set from what, 35 petabytes to over 110 petabytes.
Yeah.
You shrunk your data center by what, almost 70%.
Yeah. And what's funny, Matt, you bring that up. The work hasn't stopped.
Right.
The work continues to go. We're just doing it on a smaller footprint and we're consuming less power, but the workloads are going this way.
Yeah, I heard a fun stat the other day. We've introduced more products in the last 18 months than we have as a company in the totality of the time that we've been in existence. So the workloads are definitely not decreasing. There's development teams all over the place that are adding to what NetApp can offer its customers. So
absolutely,
I imagine it's not a small.
So in the last few minutes here, so Stan, is there going to be a data center in the near future?
We definitely will still have a data center. When I first got here, Matt, we had 14 data centers. We got down to 11, down to 9. I believe we're sitting at about 5 right now.
Wow.
Globally, across the world. So we will more than likely shrink that probably by about another maybe 2 data centers or so, and then just take advantage regionally of the cloud hyperscalers available that's out there. And if we don't truly get rid of those, regional sites, so to speak, the footprint will be extremely small. As an example, in Hong Kong, somebody may say, what does your data center look like? And I'm probably going to say, see those 2 racks? And that's going to support all of, Asia Pac, right? While taking advantage of the hyperscalers.
Interesting. Very interesting. So definitely trending down to where the data center footprint's getting small. Take advantage of new technology to maximize that footprint. I'm sure it has effects on your staffing too, because I know less things to manage, less people you need to manage it. So it sounds like it still remains all about efficiency, is all about costs and really maximizing the footprints that we have. But I don't hear the data centers going away anytime soon.
I don't think the data center is going to die. So I just can't see it.
Stan, thanks for being a guest again. We really appreciate your time and your insights on this fun topic of data centers and what is.
We'll definitely have you back.
Thank you guys.
For the next conversation. Thanks everybody for joining. If you like this content, please don't forget to hit the like button, and the subscribe button is your friend as well. Have some comments or feedback. What does your data center look like? What are your plans for its future? Would love to see those in the comments. Thanks for joining us, and we'll look forward to catching you on the next one. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.